An oil rig capsizes, sending 84 men to their frigid, watery graves. A jet fuel plant explodes, raining devastation for miles around. A pro golf star's plane goes down, shrouded in mystery. 4 vehicles plunge into a river as a bridge collapses in the darkness of night. And the worst dam failure of the 19th century annihilates an entire town. Now, engineering disasters on Modern Marvels. Just 10 miles outside the city of Las Vegas lies the suburb of Henderson, Nevada. On May 4th, 1988, this small community changed forever. 3 miles from town, 2 major explosions measuring 3.0 and 3.5 on the Richter scale ripped through the desert locale and sent visible shockwaves across a 10-mile radius. 2 people died. Over 300 people in the surrounding area were injured. Property damage was nearly $100 million. The 2 explosions originated at the Pacific Engineering Production Company of Nevada, otherwise known as PEPCON. PEPCON was one of only 2 U.S. manufacturers of ammonium perchlorate, an oxidizer for solid rocket fuel.
AP, or the long name is ammonium perchlorate, is a salt. It's comprised of ammonia, which is nitrogen and hydrogen, and a chlorate, which is comprised of chlorine and oxygen.
This odorless white granular substance is not volatile if left alone. However, it becomes highly explosive if contaminated or combined with any kind of fuel.
To give you some perspective, ammonium perchlorate, which is 55% by weight oxygen, as compared to the air we breathe, which is only approximately 29% by weight oxygen. So it's richer in oxygen and therefore promotes combustion of most fuels more intensely.
Ammonium perchlorate is used on a large scale in solid fuel rocket engines for NASA and the military. It's the chemical in rocket propellant that releases oxygen, essential in the combustion of fuel. One of the biggest customers for AP is NASA's Space Shuttle program. On January 28, 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded 73 seconds after takeoff, causing NASA to ground all Space Shuttle flights. But PEPCON continued to manufacture ammonium perchlorate and stockpile it. Never before had so much ammonium perchlorate been stored in one location.
We had approximately 10.5 million pounds of ammonium perchlorate being stored at the PEPCON facility. PEPCON was multiple buildings occupying approximately 15 acres. The buildings were typically constructed of fiberglass reinforced plastic panels over metal purlins and beams and posts. This was done because of the nature of perchlorate being so corrosive.
On the morning of May 4th, 1988, an open barrel of AP caught fire.
It's our observation that the plant housekeeping was not very good. There's a very strong possibility that much of the ammonium perchlorate on site had some very low level of contamination.
The fire from the one barrel rapidly spread to other storage containers and the fiberglass structure itself. The only tool that workers had to combat the fire was a garden hose. It was ineffectual.
With a class 4 oxidizer, such as ammonium perchlorate, there is no real method of fire extinguishment. Once it gets going, you can't put enough water on it quickly enough to break the combustion chain. The employees at PEPCON, our analysis showed and follow-up investigation showed that the safety briefings that they had basically included, if there's a fire in the plant, run like hell.
With wind blowing, the fire quickly became a raging inferno.
When subjected to heat, the AP started releasing its energy, goes into a self-heating process. It's releasing copious amounts of oxygen, and it reaches what's called critical mass.
At just a few hundred degrees, AP can begin to consume itself, acting as its own oxidizer and fuel. A chain reaction began. The plant was being engulfed by fire. Polyethylene drums launched like rockets into other nearby storage areas and ignited more AP.
Detonation is a high-speed explosion as opposed to just a fire or a deflagration, which is a low-speed explosion. What we had at PepCon was a detonation because it caused that final shock wave.
The fire burned for approximately 20 minutes, generating tremendous amounts of heat before the explosion that caused the first shock wave.
Ooh, that's gonna be loud.
It basically proceeded through the storage of ammonium perchlorate very much like a Roman candle. And then this very rapid heating and thermal shock caused the ammonium perchlorate to explode.
A total of 7 explosions occurred. Firefighters rushing to the scene were caught in the shockwave and reassessed their adversary.
As we were driving down Boulder Highway, I had the window open, and one of the other explosions that occurred, I could actually feel it hit me. Not that it did any damage, but I could feel the vibration of the explosion.
To exacerbate an already critical situation, a natural gas pipeline ran directly under the plant.
The final detonation, which measured about 3.5 on the Richter scale, occurred right over the gas line. It was a 16-inch gas line servicing the city of Las Vegas, Nevada.
Having consumed its fuel of AP, the initial fire burned itself out, but the ruptured pipeline fed a new 100-foot plume of fire. It burned for almost an hour before the line was shut down.
There was a lot of speculation in the early part of the investigation that the pipeline may have played a role in at least initiating or aiding and abetting the explosions.
It took months of investigation by teams of experts to determine the cause of the explosions.
We were retained to bring in the appropriate people with the right technologies to understand what went wrong and how it happened.
What investigators surmised was that welding debris had drifted through the air to an area of open barrels, igniting the AP.
What we found out was that there had been welding and what's called flame cutting activities on some of the steel structure in the batch dry building.
Open barrels of AP were common in certain areas of the plant, but that meant they were exposed to dust, fibers, and other contaminants, creating the perfect tinder. The storage containers that held the AP also contributed to the intense heat and combustion.
They chose to store the ammonium perchlorate in several different kinds of containers. One container they used was what we call an aluminum tote bin. Another container used was what we call poly bins, and it's like a smaller 55-gallon drum. Those two types of containers were the majority of the containers. Now, the irony of the situation is that one of the standard formulas for a solid rocket propellant is approximately 70% by weight ammonium perchlorate, 15% by weight aluminum particles, and 15% by weight rubber binder.
The polyethylene drums provided the rubber binder, and the other bins provided the aluminum fuel.
And when that's all mixed together, it makes a solid propellant.
After investigators examined the evidence left at the scene and conducted various experiments with ammonium perchlorate, the reason for the explosions became clear.
The question was, how can ammonium perchlorate detonate? The answer is, it can detonate when it's heated, and very definitely it was heated intensely by the precursor fires here. Those fires being particularly intense because they were fueled by ammonium perchlorate acting as an oxidizer.
The PepCon catastrophe demonstrated the extreme importance of proper AP storage.
I think there's a lot of things that we learned after the disaster, and certainly the most important is a safety culture within the organization that's manufacturing these types of chemicals. And remember that this stuff was basically stored out in the parking lot.
Many, many thousands of pounds of it stored in close proximity. And we know for any kind of substance that's potentially explosive that's bad practice, that instead small amounts should be stored and compartmentalized with cement walls or something, such that if one area does ignite and go, it's not going to sympathetically detonate all of the rest.
Pacific Engineering Company of Nevada has since changed its name to Western Electrochemical and is relocated to an even more remote location. However, now it is the sole manufacturer of AP in North America. The AP explosion, measuring magnitude 3.5 on the Richter scale, equaled the energy yield of over 300 tons of TNT. Engineering disasters will return on Modern Marvels.